My neighbor was 19 when I met him, but our first kiss happened at 25. I didn't plan to fall for him. In fact, I spent years convincing myself that what I felt was nothing, just a harmless crush on someone who'd eventually move away, forget me, and build a life that didn't include a quiet neighbor from across the hallway. But the way he smiled, the way he knocked on my door at random hours just to borrow sugar or show me something funny, it all added up. Over time, he became the person I thought about before sleeping and the first face I hoped to see in the morning. Still, I said nothing. Not when he turned 20, not at 21, and definitely not at 23 when he started dating someone else. I stayed silent. Until the night we turned 25. Until the moment he looked at me like he'd been waiting just as long. Until that kiss that changed everything. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our emotional stories that remind us how powerful timing and love can really be. I remember exactly what I was doing the day he moved in. It was a Thursday afternoon, early summer, and the hallway outside my apartment smelled like warm concrete and freshly delivered pizza. I was half watching TV with the windows open when I heard the distinct sound of someone bumping into the metal railing of the stairs. A box dropped, then another, and then his laugh. It was a light, unbothered kind of laugh, the kind that made you pause without knowing why. I got up and peeked out. That's when I saw him. He was wearing a navy blue tank top, sweat on his collarbone, jeans ripped at the knees. He looked young, not in a careless, immature way, more like that natural youth some people carry even when they're doing something as unromantic as dragging a mini fridge up 2 flights of stairs. His name, I would learn later, was Noah. At the time, I was 24, working part-time, juggling grad school and an unpaid internship, and honestly, just tired. Love wasn't even on my radar. I'd been through a messy breakup and convinced myself I was better off focusing on myself. So when I saw Noah for the first time, I didn't think, that's the guy I'm going to fall for. I just thought, wow, he's going to make someone very happy someday. Funny how life plays tricks on you. He caught me staring that first day, and instead of pretending not to notice, he smiled. "Hey," he called out, breathless from the stairs. "I'm your new neighbor, apartment 2B. I nodded awkwardly. "Welcome to the building." He extended a hand, still gripping a box against his hip. "I'm Noah." I didn't shake his hand. I don't know why. Maybe because I already felt something weird and I didn't trust it. Maybe because I was just socially off that day. Either way, I left him hanging, gave a short smile, and said, "I'm Evan." That was it. But he didn't seem fazed. He smiled again, like he understood something I didn't yet. Then he disappeared into 2B with the rest of his things. Over the next few weeks, I saw more of him. Casual moments, brief hellos in the hallway. Once, we ended up checking our mail at the same time, and he made a joke about how the only thing he gets are Domino's coupons and rejection letters from art galleries. I laughed harder than I should have. After that, he started stopping by more often, always with a reason. "Do you have a screwdriver?" Or, "My microwave doesn't work. Can I use yours real quick?" But every visit lasted longer than necessary. We'd talk. Sometimes about dumb things like movies, sometimes about our families. Once, he told me he used to draw superheroes in the margins of his math homework because it was the only thing that made sense to him. I told him I used to fake being asleep so my mom wouldn't ask about school. We didn't say it, but the truth was, we both understood loneliness in different flavors. Noah never asked if I was gay. I never asked him either. There was a quiet respect in the ambiguity, even if it drove me insane some nights. I didn't know if his friendliness was just friendly, or if there was something more behind those long looks when he'd lean in to laugh, or the way he lingered at my door after borrowing a book he didn't plan to read. I didn't realize how deep my feelings had grown until I saw him leaving the building one night, dressed up, nervous, and holding flowers. For someone else. He smiled when he saw me, like nothing was strange, like my heart wasn't being slammed into my ribs. "Going out?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, adjusting the bouquet. "First date." I smiled back, somehow. "Hope it goes well," I managed to say, even as my chest burned. He didn't notice the way my voice shook. Or maybe he did. Because before walking down the steps, he paused, turned back, and asked something I never expected. "You ever wish we'd met a little later?" I blinked. "What?" He shook his head and laughed like he was brushing it off. "Nothing," he said. "Forget I said that." But I didn't forget. Not for years. After that night, the one with the flowers and the question he tried to take back, something shifted between us. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way. There were no sudden confessions, no obvious walls being torn down, but the way he looked at me changed. And maybe the way I looked at him did too. He didn't talk about the date. He never mentioned how it went, or if there was a second one. But he still came by. He still knocked on my door with excuses that made less and less sense. Once he brought over a bag of frozen dumplings and asked if we could make them because the instructions were confusing. We ended up eating on the floor of my living room, watching a terrible horror movie he picked just to make fun of. "I swear I could make better effects with a toaster and red paint," he said, laughing, his mouth full. I watched him more than I watched the movie, the way he spoke with his hands, the way he leaned back against my couch like he'd lived there forever. It felt like something domestic, intimate, too intimate. So I pulled away a little, started answering the door with excuses. "I have to study," or "I'm heading out." And when I didn't hear his knock for a few days, it made me miserable. He texted once. "Noah, you okay? Haven't seen you around." I stared at the message longer than I should have. And then, like a coward, I didn't answer. It was easier to bury what I felt than face it. I kept trying to convince myself that it was nothing, that I was projecting, that he was just friendly, and I was reading too much into it because I was lonely or bored or desperate for connection. Then, one evening, a package got delivered to my apartment by mistake. His name was on the label, written in neat block letters. I debated leaving it at his door and walking away. But I didn't. I knocked. It took him a while to open. When he did, his hair was messy. He was wearing paint-stained sweatpants, and his eyes were soft in a way that knocked the breath out of my chest. "Hey," he said, surprised. "I was starting to think you died." I held out the box. "Amazon thinks I'm you." He took it with a grin. "Wouldn't be the worst identity to steal." I forced a smile. "Depends on the week." He didn't invite me in, but he didn't close the door either. We just stood there, the hallway light flickering above us, filling the silence with an electricity I couldn't ignore. "You've been distant," he said finally. I shrugged. "Just busy." He tilted his head slightly. "You mad at me?" "What? No. Why would I be?" "I don't know," he said. "Sometimes people pull away when they want space. Other times they pull away when they want someone to pull them back." That hit harder than I expected. I swallowed. "I don't know what I want." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should figure it out." It wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was honest, and that honesty made my stomach twist. I left quickly after that, pretending I had a call to take. But I couldn't focus on anything else the rest of the night. The truth was, I did know what I wanted. I wanted him. Not just physically. I wanted the way he made space for me, the way he laughed without guarding it, the way he listened without trying to fix anything. But I didn't know what he wanted. Not really. And I was too afraid to ask. The next day, I went out to clear my head. I walked for hours around the city, letting the noise drown out my thoughts. When I finally returned home, there was a note taped to my door. Went to see my mom. Be back Sunday. If you want to talk, I'll be here. Noah, just that. Simple, no pressure. But my heart beat faster as I read it again and again. He left me an open door. I just didn't know if I had the courage to walk through it. He was gone for 3 days. 3 days. I didn't realize how much space he took up in my head until I walked past his door and it stayed closed. No music playing, no footsteps overhead, no spontaneous knock asking if I wanted to watch something stupid. The silence felt too loud. I tried to keep busy, cleaned my entire apartment twice, answered emails I had ignored for weeks. Even called my dad, which I only do when I'm really avoiding something. But no matter what I did, my eyes kept drifting to his door. On Sunday night, it opened again. I heard it before I saw it. That familiar squeak of his hinges, followed by the dull thud of his backpack hitting the hallway floor. I waited exactly 7 minutes, then opened my door and stepped out like I'd just happened to need something. He was standing there in a white t-shirt, hair a mess, holding a takeout bag. He turned as I approached and smiled like it hadn't been 3 of the longest days of my life. "You came back," I said. It sounded more emotional than I meant. "Told you I would," he replied, then paused. "Were you waiting?" My throat tightened. "No, I just wanted to say hi." "Hi," he said back gently, then nodded toward his door. "Want to eat? I have way too much." I nodded. Inside, it felt like nothing had changed. The same dim lighting, the same smell of acrylic paint and cinnamon. His apartment was messy, as always, but in a charming way. Canvases leaning against the walls, a hoodie draped over a chair, books stacked like towers with no system whatsoever. We sat on the couch, eating noodles straight from the box. He talked about his mom, how she kept trying to set him up with someone from her church group. "She still thinks I'll magically fall for a girl who likes candle making and Jesus podcasts," he said with a grin. That caught me off guard. "You told her you're not into girls?" He nodded, chewing. "A while ago. She didn't take it great, but we're getting there." I looked down at my food. "I didn't know." "You never asked." "Fair." The air between us shifted again, like it always did when we danced too close to whatever was hiding under the surface. He leaned back, propping one arm behind his head, the other still holding the chopsticks. "So, what about you? You ever tell your family?" I hesitated. "I think they know, but we don't talk about it. It's like this quiet agreement to keep things vague." He nodded slowly. "That sucks." I shrugged. "It's just easier that way." "Is it?" he asked. "Easier for who?" I didn't have an answer. We finished eating and ended up sitting in silence for a while. The kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable but carried weight. Then it happened. I reached to grab a napkin and accidentally brushed my hand against his knee. It wasn't much, a quick graze. But he didn't move. I pulled back quickly. "Sorry." "Don't be," he said softly. I looked at him, and for the first time since we met, I didn't look away. Neither did he. There was something in his expression, steady, open, that made my heart beat faster. His eyes flicked from mine to my mouth, then back again, and then his fingers touched my wrist. Light, barely there, but real. My breath caught. He didn't say anything, just let his hand rest against mine for a moment longer before standing up. "I'm gonna clean this up," he said, gathering the takeout containers. The moment broke, just like that. I sat frozen, staring at the empty space between us. Did that mean something? Or had I imagined it all? When I finally stood to leave, he walked me to the door. "Thanks for the food," I said, almost whispering. "Anytime," he replied, then paused. "Hey!" I turned back, but he didn't finish the sentence. He just smiled, soft and unreadable. "Good night, Evan." "Good night, Noah." I walked back to my apartment, my skin still tingling where he'd touched me, and that night I lay awake wondering if he almost said something that could have changed everything. 2 days passed after that night. 2 full days where I didn't see him. No knocks, no messages, no late-night requests for help with his Wi-Fi. Just silence. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he was busy. Maybe I had misread everything. The touch, the look, the way he said my name at the door. Maybe it was just him being kind. Maybe he didn't mean anything at all. But deep down, I knew something had changed. And the worst part? I had no idea what to do with it. On the 3rd day, a storm rolled in. One of those unexpected spring downpours that turns the city into a blur of wet sidewalks, flooded intersections, and flickering street lamps. The kind that makes you want to hide under blankets and not speak to anyone. I was about to settle into that plan when I heard the knock. 3 short, deliberate taps. I didn't even hesitate. When I opened the door, Noah was standing there, soaked head to toe. His hoodie was plastered to his body, jeans clinging to his legs, hair dripping into his eyes. "Hi," he said, breathless. "You walked here in that?" I asked, pulling him inside. "My power's out," he said, shivering slightly. "I was gonna wait it out, but I didn't want to be alone." There was something in his voice, something different. I handed him a towel. "Sit. I'll get you some dry clothes." He stripped off the wet hoodie without a word and took the shirt I offered, one of mine. It fit tighter across his chest than I expected, and I caught myself staring a little too long. We sat on the couch again, the storm pounding the windows. This time, we didn't eat. We didn't watch a movie. We just sat. "I was going to come see you," he said quietly. "When?" "After that night." "You didn't." "I know." A silence stretched. He looked over at me. "I didn't want to mess things up." "You didn't," I said quickly. "I mean, maybe I messed it up." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Why do we keep pretending like nothing's happening? That question hit me like a punch. I didn't have an answer ready. "Because I'm scared," I admitted. "Because if I say something and it's wrong, I lose you. And I'd rather have this, whatever this is, than nothing." His expression softened. "Same." Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, something cracked in me, too. He leaned back on the couch, closed his eyes, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. I watched the way his chest rose and fell. The storm flickered against his skin in pale flashes. Then the lights went out. Everything went dark. I reached for my phone, but he was already moving closer. "I hate the dark," he said, voice barely above the rain outside. "I'm here," I said, surprising even myself. He nodded. "I know." There was a pause, a quiet tension, and then he reached for my hand. No hesitation this time. Fingers intertwined like we'd done it 1,000 times before. I could feel his pulse in his thumb, steady and real. "You feel it too, right?" he asked, not looking at me. I didn't answer with words. I squeezed his hand, and just when I thought that was it, that we were finally stepping into something real, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His face changed. He let go of my hand. "What is it?" I asked. He stood, quickly, already reaching for his wet shoes. "I have to go," he said. "It's my brother. He's in trouble." "Noah." But he was already at the door. "Can we talk when I get back?" he asked, pausing for just a moment. I nodded, confused. "Of course. Just be careful." Then he was gone. And once again I was left in the storm, wondering what I meant to him, wondering what was waiting on the other side of this silence. He didn't come back that night. I stayed on the couch with my phone in my hand, watching the storm fade into silence. At some point I must have fallen asleep because when I opened my eyes again, it was morning. Quiet. Bright. My phone screen still dark. No messages, no missed calls. I waited all day. Told myself he'd show up, that he'd knock like always, that he'd explain what happened and why he left in such a rush. But the hours passed, and nothing. By nightfall, my chest felt hollow. I was halfway through reheating leftover pasta when I heard the knock. I froze. It wasn't urgent like before, just a single, soft knock, the kind that held apology, or hesitation, or both. I opened the door. Noah stood there. His eyes looked tired. His shirt was wrinkled, and for the first time since I met him, he looked unsure of himself. "Hey," he said quietly. I stepped aside to let him in. He walked in slowly, looking around like everything in the apartment might have changed. He didn't sit, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying something heavy. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner," he said. I nodded, trying to keep my voice even. "Is everything okay?" "My brother, he got into a fight, a bad one. I had to drive out to the edge of the city, sit with him at the hospital, make sure he didn't do something stupid after." "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Yeah, me too." We stood in silence for a moment, both of us in the same room but not really in sync. Not yet. "I kept thinking about what you said," he finally continued. "About being scared." I looked up. "I am too," he said. "I've never felt this way before. Not like this." I waited. "I've liked you for a long time, Evan. Maybe since the first week we met. But I didn't think I was allowed to feel that. Not with you." I felt like my body couldn't breathe, like I was hearing something I'd only dreamed of. "Why not with me?" I asked softly. "Because you were older, smarter, calmer. I thought you saw me as some kid next door who'd eventually grow out of being around." I let out a quiet breath. "You were never just a kid to me, Noah." He stepped closer. "Then why didn't you say something?" "Because I didn't want to mess up what we had." He looked at me with something in his eyes I'd never seen before, something fragile, raw. "But I think we already passed that line," he whispered. Before I could reply, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. It was soft, honest. Like a secret we had both carried for too long finally exhaled between us. His hand came to the side of my face, his fingers resting behind my ear. My body leaned into his without thinking, without fear. Everything else, the time, the silence, the people we used to pretend to be, just dropped away. When we finally pulled apart, he didn't say anything right away. Neither did I. He looked at me like he was searching for something in my reaction. I was still trying to catch my breath. "I shouldn't have done that, should I?" he said after a moment, already stepping back. I blinked, stunned. Why would you say that? Because now it's real, and I don't know what that means. I reached out, catching his wrist before he could pull away again. It means I'm still here, and I don't want you to go. His jaw clenched like he was holding something back. But he didn't leave. He didn't kiss me again either. He just stood there, eyes locked on mine, the space between us now charged in a way that felt completely new. We were no longer pretending. No more vague smiles in the hallway. No more wondering if the other one felt it too. But just as I was about to ask him to stay for the night, really stay, his phone buzzed again. He looked down, and his expression shifted. What is it? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A message, from someone I didn't know, and it said just 4 words. We need to talk. He didn't explain right away, just stared at the message like it hurt to look at. I asked him again, gently this time. Who is it? He hesitated, then answered, Leo, a name I'd never heard before. He was someone I used to love, a long time ago. We didn't end things right, and every time I try to move on, he sends a message like that, like he knows exactly when to pull me back. I felt something twist in my chest. Do you still love him? He didn't answer, just shook his head as if unsure whether to say yes or no. But that silence was enough to leave me dizzy. He looked at me then, eyes full of conflict. I want to be here with you. I do. But I need to know this isn't just me trying to run away from something else. I didn't know what to say, so I said the truth. I don't want to be a distraction. I want to be a choice. And with that, I opened the door. He stepped out and didn't look back. Chapter 7. A Quiet Week. The days that followed felt like an echo. Everything reminded me of him. The mug he used, the space on my couch where he used to sit, the way I looked at my door every evening, hoping he'd come back. But he didn't. Not Monday, not Wednesday, not even Sunday, when he used to bring takeout just because. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. I understood. Sometimes people need silence to figure out what matters. Still, it hurt. I left my apartment less and less. I kept my phone close. I replayed our kiss in my head 100 times. Wondered if it meant what I thought it did, or if it was just a goodbye in disguise. Then, exactly 1 week later, I opened my door to throw out the trash. And he was standing there, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, eyes locked on mine. I made a mistake, he said softly. I didn't move. I chose silence when I should have chosen you. He stepped inside, slowly, like he wasn't sure I'd let him. But I did. He sat down on the couch, the same way he always had. But this time, he didn't smile. I told him no, he said. I told Leo I wasn't going back. I stayed quiet, listening. He said I'd regret it, that I'd miss the past. But when I looked at him, all I could think about was you. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Why me? I asked. He smiled, tired and honest. Because you didn't ask me to be anything. You just saw me. You were the first person who made me feel safe enough to tell the truth. We didn't need more words after that. He leaned in again, slower this time. And when we kissed, really kissed, it didn't feel like a question anymore. It felt like a choice. Ours.